Hey guys, CJ here, coming at you with another Villains Month character bio, and this time it's the Green Goblin, a well-known and popular villain for any Spider-Man fan. In fact, I would argue he's Spider-Man's signature villain, his nemesis, the one man who's caused him more pain and suffering than anyone else. And a lot of people will argue that when I say I could argue it, because they'll claim Venom should be the signature villain, they'll claim Doc Ock, but when you really get down to it, when you look at it, who's caused him more pain than anyone else? And it's a Green Goblin, and I'll talk about that in recommended reading, and I feel like some of you probably have an idea of what I'm going to discuss there just by my saying that, but we'll get back to that later. Since his first appearance in Amazing Spider-Man number 14, Norman Osborn has been a constant thorn in Spider-Man's side, to put it mildly. In fact, many people think he's the reason for Steve Ditko leaving Spider-Man fairly early on, and that's, outside the comic book world. A disagreement between Ditko and Stan Lee over the identity of the character led to a rift between the two, and Lee's original ideas for the character were pretty out of left field. He actually wanted the Goblin to be an ancient Egyptian monster that lived in a sarcophagus, so I think most fans are probably thankful that Ditko got his way on most points of contention. And since then, Goblin's appearance in numerous forms of Spider-Man media, from the comics themselves to the novelizations, but most notably in Spider-Man's animated shows and movies, are what really has cemented his place in the pantheon of villains as Spider-Man's greatest foe. But again, most people just know him as the big bad. Most people don't know how Norman Osborn, the businessman, came to be the Green Goblin, the foe of Spider-Man. Many people just jump to his origin in the Raimi Spider-Man films, and while those are somewhat accurate, they don't actually present the full portrait. It's more like a Wikipedia summary. So here's the whole story. Norman Osborn was the son of a wealthy businessman whose prospects soon soured, becoming bankrupt, an alcoholic, and a drunk. He was psychologically and physically abusive to young Norman and his mother. One night, to cure Norman's fear of the dark, he actually locked him in an empty house, where Norman envisioned himself being haunted by a goblin. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Where do you think he got the costume ideas? This broke him, leading to Norman embracing darkness, more or less, saying, fuck morality, I'm going to be the guy I have to be to get what I want in life. He also killed the family dog. Like, who does that? But it wasn't because, I'm evil. It was because, this is just another problem in my life that I'd have to deal with. Greatly fearing the failure that led to his father's downward spiral, Norman was imbued with an unquenchable thirst for power and wealth, which is the driving factor in much of his origin. Now, after graduating from Empire State with a degree in chemical engineering, Norman married a girl named Emily and had a son, Harry. After his wife died, he began to neglect his son and focus on power. This is actually a defining tilt for Norman, as the death of his wife could have been seen as the last straw in his now irreparably damned lack of morality. She was pretty much the only one that could have brought him back to the light, and she died. He then founded his own company with a partner, Mendel Strom. This company was known as Oscorp. Though they found success, Osborn wanted more power, getting Strom arrested for embezzlement when he borrowed company funds, essentially just using him to build up the company and then disregarding him as soon as he got the first chance. He then attempted to recreate a strength-enhancing serum Strom had been working on to sell for his own monetary gain. Using Strom's notes as a guide, he tested the serum on his lab employees to no success. In fact, one of these employees, Nels Van Adder, he turned into the Proto-Goblin and went on a rampage, nearly killing Norman himself. He renewed his efforts with his newly discovered notes Strom had written, but when the serum reacted and blew up in his face, he was hospitalized. He healed incredibly quickly, also gaining super strength and intelligence at the cost of his own sanity, thus driving his ego to new heights. Now on to his abilities. Green Goblin, he was a genius before the serum, but the serum actually boosted his intelligence. It also gave him super strength, durability, stamina, speed, and reflexes. He used to use a goblin suit, quote-unquote, to really protect him, and shield his body from injury. However, now he, I guess, has just said, fuck it, I'm going in by my own bad self. That doesn't mean he's going in inequipped. He still uses a glider to fly, and he has pumpkin bombs, which is kind of his signature weapon. It's his version of the Batarang, if you will. He has, like I mentioned, the glider to fly, but he also has other gadgets. He also has, I think, bat things that he throws, so a little bit of a Batman ripoff there. But really, the thing that has allowed him to keep up with Spider-Man is that super strength, durability, stamina, speed, and reflexes, but also the intense healing that he got from the serum. And this is what, kind of allowed him to recover from the accident that gave him his powers. Really, if you want to talk weaknesses about Green Goblin, the biggest one is insanity. Like, he is cray-cray. He is, out of here, no one's home, the lights are off. And, this has been a big plot point in most Norman stories, is the fact that he's a little bit like, Hannibal Lecter. It's like the monster within. He presents this dignified, sort of air of, nobility, regency, whatever, businessman-ness on the outside, cool, calm, and collected, but on the inside, he's really cray, and that kind of slips through. And this has become a huge plot point for a lot of stories, and that's what we're going to talk about now, the recommended reading. And, of course, the first on any list of Green Goblin stories has to be the death of Gwen Stacy in Amazing Spider-Man number 121 and 122. And this is, when you look at saying that he's Spider-Man's nemesis, he's his one true foe. This is what most people will point to. And since past, the second one is more fuel to that fire. But the death of Gwen Stacy is primarily like a huge, huge plot point, especially for Norman, because that's sort of like, okay, this dude's bad. Like, he is really bad. And that's why the death of Gwen Stacy was such a defining event. It was really, it crossed a line almost. And it really was unexpected and heartbreaking, but and that's when you talk about him cementing his place as the nemesis is when he kills Spider-Man's girlfriend. That's personal. And then Sins Past. That's more fuel to that fire, because not only did he kill Gwen, he had an affair with her and fathered her 2 children while she was in France. I know a lot of people were worried the storyline was going to take place when people were like, oh, Gwen's going to go to England in Amazing Spider-Man 2. Thankfully, that didn't happen. Norman wasn't really in that movie for too long. And she just died at the end anyways. So that kind of wrapped itself up nicely. But Sins Past is incredibly sort of... You just read it, you feel dirty. Like, you feel like, oh, this isn't supposed to happen. Wow. Now the image is in your head and you just can't get it out. It's so wrong. But it kind of makes sense. It's just all sort of things to make him more despicable to you. And the Clone Saga I have listed there, very, very interesting. But Dark Reign is really what I want to talk about, because this is sort of a modern twist to kind of make him more appealing. Dark Reign kind of was like, oh, he's like, I'm rehabilitated. I'm okay. I'm fine. I'm okay. It's, I've come back from the edge. I am now completely okay. And it kind of starts with him defeating the Skrull invasion and, leveraging that to, become the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. And, he kind of then, as director of S.H.I.E.L.D., does a lot of stuff. He actually, replaces S.H.I.E.L.D. with Hammer, and he forms an alliance with a bunch of villains, and Hammer essentially becomes less of a peacekeeping agency and more of a Norman Osborn best interest agency. He does a lot of crazy stuff, like invading Asgard, and it's really dividing, because you see S.H.I.E.L.D. becoming, even after Civil War, you see S.H.I.E.L.D. becoming less of a symbol for good and more for evil. And, all the while you're seeing that, okay, he's not actually this clean, sane man that he's claiming to be. He's still the Green Goblin. And in the aftermath of this, he goes completely crazy. And that's how he's essentially removed from power. And then also really interesting is a more recent saga, The Goblin Nation, which was Superior Spider-Man's number 26 through 31. And this is, I'm not going to get too much into a summary for this one, because it's still out there. It's still fresh. You can go buy it. It's really interesting, Superior Spider-Man. It's essentially like... he comes back, and nobody really knows who the quote-unquote Goblin King is, and you figure out, I guess, it's Norman. He's back, and Superior Spider-Man, with the Doc Ock sort of having taken over his brain space. It's just a really interesting dynamic there as well. So that about wraps it up for me. It got a little hazy there at the end of the recommended reading. That one was off the top of my head. I didn't have that in my script. But... really, really interesting, complex character, especially in modern times. They really want to highlight the fact that he's not just always completely insane. He's towing the line, but he is a bad dude, whether he's insane or not. He is power hungry, really just despicable. Like, you don't want to cross him on the street. You would cross to the other side of the road. You probably wouldn't even want to be in the same room with this guy. He's just a bad dude. And yet he's managed to, somehow convince everyone time and time again. He's like, I'm okay. I'm a reformed member of society. I'm not a bad dude. But anyways, what are your thoughts? Tell me in the comment section below. Would you agree with my assertion that Green Goblin is the signature nemesis for Spider-Man, or would you wholeheartedly disagree? Is there someone else you would like to see listed there? Anyways, that about wraps it up for me here. So signing off, this is CJ, and I'll see you next time.